Waffle, 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 waffle. Waffle.
Hello, hello, and welcome to Geek Waffle episode 3, entitled It's the Final Space Down. Oh, I make myself smile. I make Erin kind of cringe. And speaking of Erin, Erin is my co-host today. Say hello, Erin.
Hello, Erin.
I knew she was going to do that. It was so obvious.
Oh,
So episode 3, Geek Waffle, something I'm still trying to kind of do, and I'm like 3 episodes in, so that's good. From the title, we're obviously going to be talking about the highly underrated show as far as I'm concerned, because I don't think it's as in the public eyes, at least we kind of know it. But the show's called Final Space, an animated show that's kicked off, was it 2018, I think? 2019. It's been quite sporadic in its release, or its kind of season schedule, much like kind of Rick and Morty, and when that first kicked off as well. I know you've done an awful lot of research.
oh no, that was season 2. It was 26th of February 2018.
See, now this is the kind of benefit of having somebody that actually kind of done a lot of research. I've got some talking points, but Erin done, like, I don't know, a 14-page essay on your.
More than that.
So
lots and lots of notes.
So Erin will be the one I turn to and go, Erin, when was this? And she'll be like, this and blah. So
I also have IMDb.
Right, okay. We're cheating somewhat, but in any event, we'll talk about Final Space, what the show actually is. We're going to kind of talk about what we like about it, favorite characters, least liked characters. Erin probably kind of knows where I'm going with that one almost instantly there, but we'll save that. We'll do a bit of season 1 recap, season 2 recap, and with season 3 kicking off. I think it was yesterday it kicked off in the States.
Yeah.
Then we'll talk about where we think that's going to end up and stuff like that. Because I'm probably going to kind of wait till it kind of all dumps on Netflix. I probably don't think I'll watch it all in a winner. Don't like binge watching, but that's. I don't want to binge watch because it's creepy. But yeah, so for we'll just kind of kick off. Try and kind of let us both speak as equally as possible on this, because I know we're very kind of strong personalities, so we may end up talking over each other. So like, I really hope that doesn't happen. And if on occasion you think it's really kind of weird that I keep glancing off to the side, Erin's here. My camera's here, so in case you're wondering what's going on, I'm not being weird or weirder. It's because Erin's there. Hi, Erin, in the corner there. So Final Space. What is it? So animated show, as Erin says, kicked off in 2018. Centers around a gentleman named Gary Goodspeed, who at the start of the kind of first season is effectively in prison. He's been kind of exiled in a kind of ship all by his lonesome for a fairly kind of heinous explosion-based crime, when he tried to ask a lady out. So when we can
92 Imperial Star Cruisers and a small Mexican family restaurant.
Yes, that's correct. So when we kick off, he's pretty much at the end of his 5-year sentence. Is kind of got like a few weeks kind of left, kind of thing. And his only kind of companions within the kind of ship are a bunch of kind of robots who are called, is it Sames?
Yep.
Yeah, because they're obviously the same. The AI Hugh, who's in the first season kind of just a disembodied voice, and everybody's favourite Kevin, who is the Deep Space Insanity Avoidance Companion. I think I'm saying that right. Voiced by...
I quite like the way that they called him a Deep Space Infinity. What's it? A Deep
Space Insanity Avoidance Companion. So
a dick. Which he proves himself to be.
Yes, very much so. Much in the same vein as kind of Rimmer and Red Dwarf. Like, the reason that Rimmer's brought back in Red Dwarf is to keep Lister sane.
On my notes that there's a Red Dwarf link with the companion Kevin, because it did remind me a lot of Red Dwarf and how Rimmer was brought back as Lister's Deep Space Insanity Avoidance Companion.
And yeah, Rimmer is definitely a dick as well.
And definitely a Kevin.
Yeah, definitely, because the thinking behind it, obviously with Rimmer as well, is it's I think the least liked person or whatever. Like I think in the Red Dwarf, it's like the person who shared the most conversation with him,
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. But Kevin's pretty much designed to actually kind of like keep you kind of sane. He just winds Gary up constantly. I wasn't 100% with Kevin at first, but like I definitely kind of grew to love him, and I think it's more his interaction with Gary that I really like as well.
Yeah. And it's Fred Armisen, so
yeah, Fred Armisen
everybody
is really
loves Fred Armisen.
Absolutely. So so Gary is in prison ship because he was naughty and he blew up something when he was trying to impress a lady on his side of things, and through this stuff shit hits the fan. He meets Mooncake, and in the background Erin trying to kind of stand up too much because I got a headphone in my ear and I'll like rip my head off. So he meets Mooncake, he meets Avocado, and he meets the Lord Commander as well, who is the villain of the first season. And it just becomes this kind of epic space sci-fi epic kind of thing, with way more emotional beats than I would actually kind of expect for something like this.
Well, the whole very beginning of season 1, you see what Gary's life's like aboard the Galaxy 1, and it's just depression, basically. Like, he's wandering about the ship in his dressing gown and just, like, alone. And I think that's what drew him, because because we're, like, people who need other people, that's why he called the fridge Beth, why he wrote names on all of the sames, like Carl and Boobs and Noodle.
Other Beth, I think is what, like, one of the other fridges.
Beth was the one that's in the med lab.
Yeah.
But I think he did that as a way to keep himself from going insane and try and get some kind of companionship when he's just basically got Kevin who he hates.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, so as I say, when it kicks off, so like Gary's been bad, and as I say, we're kind of thrust into this kind of grand space sci-fi epic. Gary's still kind of partially in prison at the time when he when he first meets Mooncake, and then Mooncake turns it to be this kind of epic Ark of the Covenant type kind of like MacGuffin that everybody's kind of after, but with a personality.
I loved the meeting with Mooncake, and there was a bit of an alien sort of link to that. He's fixing something on the ship, and then he's got a little bit of time, so he starts watching Princess Bride, though it's not Princess Bride.
Oh, yeah. It's the full Princess Bride.
He's like, there's a little pixel on the loose. And it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's Mooncake. And it lands on his face, and he's like, it's a face eater! And he's like, no, it's a face hugger. Which is what I interpreted as a little bit of an alien kind of
link. Oh, absolutely. But it's the more adorable type of face hugger, because you obviously don't want the one in the alien hugging you as well. So yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's kind of, I don't want to kind of say hard to describe. It's hard to kind of describe well, I think, is my problem here, because it's one of these things where when it kicks off, like thrust into everything almost straight away. Like, what am I talking? I'm talking a wee bit of piss here, kind of like going off topic here. But yeah, so as it says, everything just kind of like starts happening to Gary. So when the first episode, and this is obviously just from memory, basically he's still in kind of prison. He meets Mooncake. Some bounty hunters kind of then are essentially tasked to kind of come and retrieve Mooncake, one of which is Avocado, which we'll kind of get to, and there are like a couple of others that I think are maybe kind of geared up to be like almost long-term antagonists, but like I'm pretty sure like the main one gets kind of off in the next episode, if I remember. Going to kind of potentially start issuing a spoiler warning here. We're probably going to do a season 1 and season 2 recap, but just in case I start kind of saying stuff that I shouldn't. So yeah, I think the first episode kind of ends with, is it like the ship kind of like exploding slightly, and because kind of leads to one of my favorite kind of jokes in the first episode, where like Gary's got seconds, literally seconds, to get to the ship, and he actually kind of like he uses some of these seconds to come back and drop kick Kevin, in like midair, which is just absolutely like using almost his kind of time well to actually kind of like annoy Kevin just before he actually tries to escape the ship, kind of thing. So and that's pretty much how it kind of goes, isn't it? And then yeah, and then for that kind of point onwards, it's it gets grander and grander and so on and so forth, kind of thing.
Yeah, the very beginning of each episode in season 1, it's like an explosion happened, and Gary is floating about in space, and Hugh is the only sort of voice that he's got, and he's got like a rip in his top, which is letting out oxygen. And he says he does a countdown of season 1, so he's like 10 seconds remaining, or 10 seconds of oxygen remaining. And then he's like
10 minutes. It's 10 minutes.
Yeah, sorry, 10 minutes of oxygen remaining, 9 minutes. And then it gets to a certain point where Gary, facing his ultimate demise, says, "Can you not make it a little bit more cheery?" And he's like, "How do you want me to do that?" And he's like, "Cookies."
Yeah.
He's like, "Okay, it's 9 minutes or 6 minutes till the cookies are done." Yeah. And he's like, "What type of cookies?"
So the thing about cookies as well, it's fairly kind of established in season 1 that cookies are like this kind of forbidden thing that Gary's not allowed to have. Kevin's allowed to kind of smash them into his processing grill whenever he actually kind of feels like it, but Gary can't actually kind of like eat the cookies, to the point whereby if like he's told at one point if he tries to eat one of the cookies, a full day will be added onto his sentence, and he does, and it is. But yeah, and then cookies play a relatively humorous kind of portion in the second series as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of callbacks to the cookies. Like cookies are mentioned all the way through, and we don't really know why.
Yeah, I think it's definitely in season 1 anyway. In season 1, it's that kind of like unattainable, like he wants a cookie, but Hugh's like, no, you're not allowed cookies. The point whereby like when he finally gets a hut of the cookies, he's kind of like, these are all right. Like I've probably had better cookies. So yeah, it's quite like it's quite funny, and as I say, call back in season 2. I think the people we've kind of chatted to about, like some people have kind of like watched the full series, some people have watched bits and bobs. I think almost the initial general consensus is I think that Gary's really annoying. I kind of disagree. Like I was maybe on the fence a bit at first, because like there's bits where like he's done it in like almost that kind of Will Ferrell style kind of like comedy, whereby like he shouts for a second and then he's kind of normal. I was like, I don't know if I kind of like this, but through eventually I was laughing my ass off at him. But it's the fact that he's actually a fairly kind of well-rounded character as well, because he's pretty loyal, almost to a fault, like almost instantly. So like he befriends Avocado to the point whereby, because he effectively captures Avocado, and Avocado is a giant cat as opposed to a giant avocado.
The clasp of friendship. The
clasp of friendship, but like when they first meet, they're obviously they're enemies, but doesn't it take them that long? Like there isn't this big long season arc whereby they're essentially like, you know, eventually kind of friends by then. Like it's pretty much within a couple of episodes they're doing the clasp of friends.
Yeah, because Avocado was pretty much captured, and because this is the first person that Gary's seen in 5 years,
he wants to play cards.
Yep. And doesn't really go too well.
Well, I mean, with the cards, fair enough. But like as I say, like you're expecting pretty much like very kind of early on that Avocado is just going to go, get to you. I'm no your friend.
Yeah.
Like I barely know you and stuff like that. And Gary's kind of obviously so desperate for a friend anyway, like an actual physical kind of person, as opposed to like Kevin or some of the Sames or Hugh, that he pretty much latches on almost immediately. But then he becomes almost, as I say, fiercely loyal to begin with, to the point whereby like so the reason that Avocado is kind of essentially in the position he's in, like bounty hunter, and he's also like the like Lord Commander's right hand, is because his son Little Cow, which you think maybe it's not that imaginative a name, but it just kind of sticks. So I do wonder, like, if we do get to see a progression a bit later on. There's like a future based episode I think in season 2 with Little Cattle, but they're still calling them Little Cattle. Is that right? Like it's pretty much kind of stuck.
I would like to see. I know this is sort of jumping ahead a little bit, but I would like to see in season 3 something about like Little Cattle's mother.
Yeah,
because that's not been discussed up until
it's
this point.
It's kind of been like left on the back burner kind of thing, hasn't it? It might just be
not even mentioned whatsoever.
Yeah.
Unless Ventrexians can, they're like worms. They don't need another
They might,
to have a child.
Yeah, it is a bit weird that they've kind of kept that. I mean, we've seen like the family that Gary kind of wears a skin of.
Yeah, I mean, episode 2 of season 1 is one of my favourite episodes, and that has a lot of callbacks in it in later episodes. But they've been. Avocado tells Gary that the Lord Commander has a son, and they have to go to Terracon Prime, I think it is, to go and rescue Little Cattle. And to do that, they jump off the ship, but because Gary's still a prisoner, Hugh injects him in his neck with a liquid and says you've got 5 hours, otherwise your brain's going to explode or melt or whatever it does. So because they don't have, or Gary doesn't have any papers, they then meet Clarence.
Yeah.
And Clarence comes into a lot more. And I'm sure we're going to have a discussion about Clarence a little bit later on. But I think it's a Hublot suit, or the skin that he's given is a Hublot. And it's of a female. And
it's still wet.
Yeah, it's like a warm, wet pair of house slippers. But yeah, so he wears this suit and they're trying to track down Little Cattle, but they get sidetracked and they end up meeting the family De Winter. And the suit that Gary's wearing is Melanie De Winter, who is the mother of this family.
Who went missing.
Yeah, they're all terribly upset until they see Gary. And the 2 small children, the De Winter children, start saying how much they love their mother and end up tearing the skin off Gary.
Yep.
Which is both hilarious and terrifying.
It's called back so many times as well, isn't it? Because obviously when him and kind of Avocado are like escaping, but later on they jump off like the catwalk and then they land on a car, which is the De Winter family, and Gary is still fairly emotionally invested. He's like husband, kids, or whatever. Like he actually he addresses them as if he's still their mother before he gets kind of windscreen wiped off the side. So and then there's a couple of kind of callbacks in season 2 as well. So it's a running kind of gag. But in that same kind of episode as well is where we meet the Lord Commander. And I've spoken to Yvonne about this numerous times and what have you. As far as I'm concerned, I cannot tell it's David Tennant. Like,
no, me neither.
I just like
little tiny bits where I can hear it, but it's the same. Clarence, who sold Gary the suit, is voiced by Conan O'Brien. And I wouldn't be able to tell that voice either. Whereas Olan Rogers, who voices Gary, that's his voice in real life. So,
but so David Tennant plays the villain, but you would never know unless we've just told you. Yvonne, as I say, is my other half. She claims that she can tell. I wholeheartedly disagree. I think she's lying, and I say that to her constantly. But he's so the Lord Commander is a very short alien who's been he's been to final space, isn't he? He's been like essentially he's been touched by final space is probably the
I think the thing is that he has met a Titan possibly, and or is it the one with all the eyes?
So it's possible, but I think so in season 1 there's the kind of the flashback episode where Gary kind of meets his dad and stuff like that, and then you see the Lord Commander as a young kind of like good person, but when that bit happens, when you actually see something kind of happening to him there.
Yeah.
So I think he's been kind of touched by Final Space or touched by a Titan, which sounds really dodgy. It's not like I'm not meaning to make it sound dodgy.
You're on
but yeah.
the doll if you've been touched by the Titan.
Yeah. So, but he's the antagonist for season 1, and so because he's been like touched by Final Space, he's got like kind of mind powers. Though whenever he kind of uses them, it kind of it starts to degrade him and stuff like that. And just kind of like calling into this while the show for a 12, because I'm pretty sure the rolling certificate for it is a 12, but it's quite violent to the point in that episode, in episode 2, Gary gets his arm ripped right in the socket. Gary gets his arm ripped right in the socket by the Lord Commander, and it's just like, oh, hello,
Gary.
Yeah, no, it's just Gary.
Okay, just the Gary.
Gary.
Yeah, for some reason the Lord Commander calls Gary the Gary the entire way through. Every time he sees him, it's always the Gary, and it really annoys. I don't know if he's just doing it to annoy Gary.
I don't know, I don't know if it's just a callback, because earlier on, just before we actually kicked this over, I watched the original 7.5-minute pilot for and like the Lord Commander at the time, no voice by David Tennant. I think it was probably used as a show reel type thing.
I think it might have been Olan that voiced. Well, he probably voiced a lot of the characters in it.
Yeah, but so he's called he keeps calling him the Gary and that. So I think it's maybe just a callback. He was always going to essentially kind of date in that side of things. So
there was a good quote in it where after the Lord Commander rips his arm off, Gary says, "I'm gonna murder your face off." And then the Lord Commander says, "I'm going to murder your face on." And Gary's like, "That doesn't even make any sense." So funny.
And then it's like season 1 kind of progresses. Like obviously the Lord Commander effectively is after Mooncake, which that cute, adorable kind of creature over Erin's shoulder there, and on my T-shirt, is essentially a planet killer. Like he's and a byproduct to Final Space as well. So Final Space is just effectively like another dimension of space is probably the easiest way to describe it, because you got normal space, you got inner space, which is mentioned a bit later in season 1 with Mustache Gary, and Final Space obviously. So and in the first season, like they're effectively trying to crack open Final Space to release the Titans, which are these gigantic kind of like evil antagonists that are effectively gonna like kick all kinds of bottom and normal space and destroy everything, and your general evil villains kind of thing. The first time it is actually ever cracked open, a byproduct of that pops out, and it's Mooncake, and it's like,
it's crystallized Final Space, and it was Gary's dad who caused it.
Yeah, because I think they're trying to close the breach.
Yeah,
it's like
at the end of season 1, I think it's like episode 9.
Yeah, so that's done twice. So Mooncake first kind of created when they first closed it with like the dad, and then obviously at the end of the first season with Quinn as well. We haven't even mentioned Quinn at all.
No,
so,
I haven't.
Yeah, well, kinda. So the reason that Gary's in all the shit in the first place is that he meets a lady. And he's very enamored by the lady, and in order to actually kind of impress the lady even further, the lady named Quinn Ergon, he poses as an Infinity Guard, which is like the Space Marines, the Space Soldiers, whatever, in kind of Final Space, to try and obviously kind of woo her.
He's in the toilet and he karate chops, or maybe it's a Star Trek thing where you do the.
No, he definitely goes. Like he whacks him kind of thing and knocks him out pretty much instantly.
And this guy collapses and he steals his suit, and then Gary's feeling bad So he goes to a vending machine in a toilet and gets what he believes to be aspirin.
Yep.
Pours it down his throat, gets some water from the toilet and pours that down, and then goes, "You're a good guy, Gary."
So then he goes. He tries to kind of like woo the lady who is like, oh, hello, lady.
Yeah, she's writing on a napkin at the time, and he approaches her and says, "I haven't had a woman's number before I've even spoken to her, but I like your style."
And then she effectively, shit, like an alarm goes off, and then Gary's like, "Uh-oh," and that's what leads to him essentially kind of destroying all the Infinity Guard chips in the small family-based Mexican restaurant as well, and that's what lands him in
Mexican family restaurant.
And throughout the course of season 1, he effectively records video messages, like pretty much like he's in lockdown, much like the rest is. Yep. And sends them on to Quinn. As I think it's probably part of the his proper avoidancy insanity. Kevin's obviously like fucking useless, so that's what he kind of uses to essentially kind of to keep himself sane. And he's not so much been lusting after. He's been kind of pining, but he's in like love at first sight for him. Quinn's probably is enamored by Gary when it first kind of kicks off. To the point whereby actually, when they do finally kind of meet up again, she's like, "Who the hell are you?" And he's like, "Oh!" Like his feelings.
But also on episode 2 of season 1, we meet Nightfall.
Yes,
there was one thing that I don't think they actually called back to, and that was Nightfall put like a USB stick into Kevin. But I don't think that was ever mentioned again, unless I missed it.
It is because there's when the Infinity Guard take over the ship. They take over the ship and they take over like all the Sames and everything. When Avocado and kind of like Quinn are trying to fight
to stop Kevin from.
Yeah. Kevin actually kind of has the USB.
Oh no, that's right. Yeah.
And he uses it to kind of like to fix stuff. He's actually the hero in that episode.
Yeah, well, he's the hero quite a few times in it, but he never gets the credit he deserves.
It's because he's very unliked. Because Kevin is the magic. The magic is Kevin.
Exactly. I like the start of episode 2 as well, where they're fixing the ship and Kevin's just bouncing about in the ship. Singing a song about the holes in the ship. Nothing but holes, but holes.
It's later on when Gary's like, didn't he do anything to the ship, and especially leave the flamethrowers alone. And there's this kind of bit where like Kevin running for the ship with flamethrowers and like just destroying the shit of everything.
Yeah.
So basically, kind of Gary's kind of like his ultimate goal in the first series is to essentially kind of still kind of be with Quinn. He's met this lady. He's kind of went to prison for her, and so that's kind of like his goal. And then, but like through it, he meets Mooncake, he meets Avocado, he meets Little Cattle, meets Tribor. Less said about him, the better. But yeah,
there was a bit where Quinn was determined that she was going to leave the ship, and Hugh stops her and makes her watch all of the videos that Gary recorded for her.
One every day.
Yeah, which I don't think really sealed the deal for her.
No.
Love with them.
But she definitely kind of grows to like have that respect, and it kind of almost opens the door for her to actually go, well, I wouldn't mind getting to know this guy better. Yeah. Isn't it like instant love, like kind of thing? Yeah, it's just kind of like, oh, well, maybe this guy isn't the big douche canoe that I actually kind of thought he was. Like he's actually quite sweet, and he's like, as I say, he's fiercely loyal to both kind of to anybody effectively kind of meets that's kind of good. Obviously, he's maybe no kind of nice to Kevin, but like but even at the same time. And again, I've mentioned spoilers anyway, but like at the end of season 1, culminates in an epic kind of Star Wars battle. People are getting kind of off left, right, and center, which includes Kevin. Don't worry, Kevin's fine. Like he comes back, but he does seem fairly. Does he seem sad, or is he actually kind of happy about. I'm trying to remember because I don't know if like he lets out a wee snigger or something like that when he sees Kevin floating past. Okay, is he actually kind of cut up a bit, or is he just kind of like?
I think Gary deep down does like Kevin.
It must be really deep down, really deep.
But I mean, the continuity in this is great because the bit that you were talking about earlier, when Kevin has to put the chip into, it's like a reactor or something. He gets a lot of damage on his round shell body.
Yeah.
And the damage is there throughout
the rest of the series.
Well, not just the series, the rest of the show.
Yeah. Well, when season 2 kicks off, he's rejigged his shell because he's basically kind of rebuilt himself.
You can still see where the damage has been.
Yeah. But they're fairly sturdy, our old Kevins as well.
Yeah, you can't kill them.
Yeah, as you find it in season 2 when there's multiple Kevins.
Yep.
So yeah, it's quite funny. There's a lot of humor. There is going to get onto this as well. There's a lot of emotional kind of beats in it. So obviously when we kind of spoke about this kind of last, you'd mentioned that the first episode is actually a bit more kind of emotionally kind of like charged, and I wasn't kind of like I didn't kind of quite agree at first, and then I kind of rewatched it and was like, no, I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, it kind of lets you know that it's not just slapstick comedy all the way through, although there is a lot of slapstick comedy.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of emotion, like, embroidered all the way through it.
Absolutely, kind of, and like there are a few bits that'll be like, most notably, and again, spoiler alert for anybody that does actually want to watch it, but in the 6th episode, I think it is, just at the kind of conclusion, Avocado manages to kind of save Little Cattle with Gary's kind of help. And just as they're kind of doing the reconcile, they're on the ship and everything, it turns out that the Lord Commander attached a bomb onto Little Cattle, and so Avocado kind of grabs it in the nick of time, tells Gary to look after his son, and sacrifices himself to the point whereby when I watched that the first time, I was like,
my boy.
I was absolutely kind of crushed off the cheeks. I was not expecting it at all. When I saw the bomb, I was like, oh no, they'll throw it off the ship, it'll be fine. And because obviously Avocado up to that point is kind of geared up to be like a big main character.
Yeah, he's amazing. I love that Avocado.
And you just kind of like, you get completely and utterly blindsided to the point whereby you're like, oh, and just like even the end of the episode, it ends slow motion, like the music's kind of more somber and quiet, and it lingers on for a bit as well, and you're just like, so then in turn, even though they've pretty much just met, Gary ends up becoming a surrogate father to kind of Mooncake as well, lead. And I know this sounds like I shouldn't be laughing at this, but like when I rewatched season 1, I've watched this episode again and we were like laughing at it, but they decide to go on a murder rampage. They're going to go and find the Lord Commander and like kick like 10 shades of shit out of him and all the rest of it. And they're on the ship and they're ready to kind of go along, and then it suddenly hits Gary. That obviously what's kind of happened because they want kind of like some pumping tunes in. And is it Kevin? Kevin turns on the music, but it's like all this somber shit, and it really kind of gets to Gary. So like he breaks down, Mooncake breaks down to the point where Gary's like, "Shut the hell up, Mooncake!" And it's just like Mooncake's crying his face off. Like Little Cat is fine, Kevin's obviously fine because he's a dick. But yeah, it's just despite the fact that there's like this huge weighty emotional thing happen. They managed to find humor, but it doesn't feel like it's kind of insensitive. Like you're sitting there going, like, because he's addressing his feelings, but at the same time they've done it in a way that's really funny.
Because they always keep sort of dropping it in that Avocado's dead. Not avocado. And it's always
an easy mistake to make.
They're like, what was the name of that guy? Avocado. Didn't he die?
Yeah, because Kevin's obviously very sensitive and nice. And
everything. But the seems to it as well.
Yeah. I wonder if the AI's all tied in.
Yeah, possibly.
So there's that. That's obviously quite kind of like, as I say, it's quite crushing. The episode as well where Gary kind of manages to go through a time rift to actually kind of meet his like dad to the just before his dad kind of has to kind of close final space the first time. Again, absolutely kind of like, I'm okay.
But it has a really funny bit beforehand, because this is
Yeah.
what you were alluding to earlier, where John Goodspeed and Jack, who turns out to be the Lord Commander, are best friends. And they've been best friends for 29 years. It was really
it's something kind of long, yeah.
And then Gary says, "This guy's a dick. He killed my best friend." And then they just beat him up because it's like a time freeze.
Yeah.
And they beat him up, and then when time's unfreezing, he's like, "Ah!"
Yeah, it's such a good bit, to the point. Like I like the fact as well that when they're talking after they've kind of done the beat up, like he still manages to punch him one as well, just as they're still talking, kind of thing. But yeah,
and it's voiced by, or John Goodman is voiced by the wonderful Ron Perlman.
Early Ron.
Yeah.
I'm sure you meant John Goodspeed as opposed to John Goodman.
Yeah, not John. He doesn't have Ron Perlman voice him.
Oh no. Yeah, the very unmistakable Ron Perlman plays John Goodspeed, and yeah, as always, is brilliant. Like I don't think there's anything I can really kind of fault that man on. Like he's like voice work and live action performances. He's just brilliant whatever he's in. But again, they could have kind of made him like kind of very emotionally unavailable. They could have had him like be like an abandoner Gary, but like he's very kind of nurturing Gary, because like it's just him and Gary, which we'll get to at some point when we're talking about like the next series. But yeah, it's just him and kind of Gary. But like again, he could be an emotionally distant father figure and stuff. But like before he goes off on that mission, they are pretty much they're quite kind of tight and.
Without giving too much away, the roles are sort of switched with Gary's parents.
Yeah. I would totally kind of like say that, but yeah, again,
when he takes the antimatter bomb and he's going to close a breach in final space, Gary's supposed to do it with him, and he locks the airlock so that Gary can't come out. And then Gary's talking to his dad, and he says, because he's talking about saving the Earth, no, the universe, because that's cooler.
Yeah.
And he says, just do your best. And he's like, but what if my best isn't good enough? And he's like, it's good enough for me.
I know, I was just like, I'm okay, I'm not crying, you're crying. So that kind of happens then. The kind of 10-minute timer eventually kind of gets to the last episode, and as I say, it kind of culminates in the big epic battle where like final space is actually kind of closed by kind of Quinn, and we're kind of left kind of quick cliffhangery because like so Gary's floating in space and right to almost the very last second, and then he's kind of essentially kind of captured by like a beamy light, and that's when the first season ends. And I think we had to wait quite a bit for season 2, I think. Sorry.
I was a bit confused when I was watching it back again, because knowing the Galaxy One and who was on the Galaxy One, etc., when you see the sort of opening sequences where it's like 10 minutes until your oxygen supply, but you see like Imperial guards floating about, and I was like, did that happen? Like, were they on the ship? Was there someone at the top?
So they will only be...
Yeah, but they were working for the Lord Commander.
Yeah, exactly.
And they all got blown up, which was why he was floating about with them. So it does make sense in the end. But it just goes to show the amount of thought that Olan Rogers put into season 1. In fact, the whole thing, with all of the short clips that you sent me, like Gary Space, he has obviously been thinking about this for a long time.
Yeah.
And he's had the characters in his brain for a long time until he could actually bring them to the small screen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's obviously, it's quite kind of good when you're able to kind of go back and kind of see almost like the precursive stage to kind of what we're watching, because like like the final space pilot, the 7.5 minute thing, is quite kind of like, you know, like a lot of it's kind of there. You see Kevin, you see Avocado, Quinn's kind of mentioned stuff like that. Lord Commander's there. Slightly different to obviously kind of how like season 1 wraps up, but that's kind of fine. But then Gary's space is a wee bit more kind of, I'd say, conceptual. It's like it's almost kind of like a weird kind of like avant-garde kind of thing. Yeah, like it's like even it could even it kind of looks even like it's like a college project. Like I could totally imagine somebody kind of doing that for like, you know, their college show reel kind of thing. So that's what Gary's space kind of looked like. And then the completely separate cartoon, which was it Lion Blazes?
Yeah, that was like Final Space mixed with D&D mixed with arcade games.
And Tron, because they get sucked into a game kind of thing. But even in that, because it just kept playing kind of on YouTube and I watched it earlier, but like even in that, there's like elements like, for example, the time freeze, and they use it to kind of beat up a boy in that. And it's obviously kind of what he used later on with the like beating up of the Lord Commander as well. So he's definitely kind of had this in his head. But yeah, so when season 2 kicks off, Gary's obviously, he's rescued, but it's like a garbage kind of ship, isn't it? And Hugh, who's at the end of season 1's downloaded into Gary's kind of like spacesuit AI.
His helmet.
He's actually downloaded into like an annoyingly cumbersome wobbly robot thing. Which again is pretty.
It kind of reminds me of Return to Oz, where it had the big fat robot thing.
Return to Oz, nightmare fuel for children, back in the day. So when season 2 kicks off, and again we're probably going to get into spoiler territory. Gary's kind of rescued by a garbage kind of thing, which does effectively dump him on a planet.
On a garbage planet,
Where he meets the aforementioned Clarence, who becomes like a major character in season 2, along with his children Ash and Fox. And it turns out that the person that's been kind of helping Clarence kind of clean stuff up is Little Cow, so he's reunited with Little Cow, and probably much to his annoyance, Kevin rebuilds himself as well, and is still around, much to his annoyance. So season 2.
Also, we cut to Nightfall, because at this point, a lot of what the Lord Commander was doing, his whole thing in the first season was to capture Mooncake, or E-35-1. Because Mooncake was solidified final space and a planet destroyer, and it was only him that would be able to rip a hole in final space and unleash all of the Titans and therefore destroy the universe. So at the end of season 1, the Lord Commander has Mooncake strapped up to this machine, and it was all foiled. And then at the start of season 2, the Lord Commander still has Mooncake attached to the machine, but Nightfall comes in, murders the Lord Commander, and rescues Mooncake.
So that's kind of gone on. As I said, we meet kind of new characters, and then we're introduced to the dimensional keys, which is essentially the quest for season 2, whereby they need to acquire all the dimensional keys in order to actually kind of open the door to. So in season 1, they meet a good Titan by the name of Bolo, voiced by the ever fantastic Keith David, and in season 2, they need the dimensional keys to basically kind of open his prison and like help him kind of effectively kick the Titans' arses. So that's what the quest line for season 2 is. I've not mentioned them. I'm going to kind of mention them because like it seems like I'm avoiding them deliberately. So one character I've avoided quite a bit is Tribor. I cannot stand Tribor. Probably the best way to kind of say this. In season 1 at all. Cannot stand him at all. I think he is probably one of the most annoying characters. Like, people say Gary's annoying to the point whereby he actually riffs on that at the start of season 2. Like, he actually says, people on Reddit say that I'm annoying, which I thought was quite hilarious. Tribor is actually annoying. He's got this thing whereby, like, you're like, why would he twiddle their wieners? They wouldn't. Like, he repeats the stuff.
Everything's a question.
Yeah. And it's just, it grates
Why
on me
would
so
I know
much.
that?
He's just really,
Yeah,
really
I
annoying.
mean, I think the whole point is that Tribor's an annoying character. In
Yeah.
fact, I think I will see your Tribor and raise you a Clarence. I think Clarence is the worst character in Final Space.
Interesting. Now the reason I said season 1 is even though like Tribor appears in season 2, and there is points where like I'm still like, oh, there's like almost a whole episode dedicated to him kind of going and getting his resistance and stuff. I did find that, and I mustn't have been the only one, like the whole asking himself a question, then kind of repeating the question and stuff like that. That seemed to kind of totally and utterly teeter off in season 2. So I couldn't be the only one that like must have hated that. And he like didn't get me wrong, I still didn't love the character, but I grew slightly more tolerant of him by the end of season 2. I was like, okay, he's fine. Clarence, I'd probably disagree. I actually think Clarence is quite funny. I mean, he's a bit dickish
He is
to
the
pretty much
worst.
everybody like around him, but I actually think he's quite funny with his dickishness. Obviously, like he's very self-absorbed. He's only really in it for himself, despite the fact that he's got like his 2 kids to look after. But he really only kind of uses them as like almost kind of bodyguards kind of thing.
He's got kids in the same way that what's his name has kids. Oh God, what's his name? That big purple guy you love.
That big purple guy I love. Thanos.
Yeah, Thanos with his adopted kids. Thanos doesn't give a shit about his kids, and neither does Clarence.
Yeah. But I think what makes Clarence a bit more likable for me is he's actually quite funny, and like in the series, like especially like when Loggins kicks off and he's like, "No, Loggins!" Like I actually think he's quite funny. He's a dick, and he ends up being fairly abhorrent and like very betray is probably the best way I can kind of say
He's
it.
also very sexually charged, which I find repugnant.
Yeah, he wears his kind of dick on his sleeve as well.
Well, he's got his money compass as well, which is down his pants.
So Clarence appears very briefly in season 1 as a one-time character, but then is a bigger character in season 2. As it says, we meet Ash and Foxo. Ash is like a kind of psionic kind of lass with pink hair, and she's got like mind powers and stuff like that, which can essentially be unleashed if you mention prompt her. And then you've got Fox, who doesn't like Ventraxians, but ends up kind of being really kind of friendly with Little Cattle. But he's got like a gun for an arm kind of thing, and he's very kind of but he's also quite kind of quite reserved as well. Like he's got like emotional.
He's a bit like, is it Lenny in Of Mice and Men, where he's like a big, stupid, dumb, lovable beast.
Yeah, maybe
Killing machine.
So they're introduced. We're also introduced to Hush Fluffles, which is it Todd something like.
I can't remember what his last name was.
But I like his kind of outfit. Like he's kind of like he turns it to be a human, but like he's got this kind of
place.
Yeah, and he's voiced by the ever fantastic Alan Tudyk, who, as far as I'm concerned, is a voice chameleon. There's so many kind of roles that he does, and you're just like, oh, it was Alan Tudyk. So for anybody that doesn't know, character actor played Wash and Firefly.
He was in 28 Days with Sandra Bullock.
Take your word for that. Tucker and Dale versus Evil.
He was in Dodgeball as a pirate, or the pirate.
Pirate Steve. Yep, absolutely. So he also voiced the robot in iRobot.
And he was also in Wreck-It Ralph 2 as the curator or something. And
Wreck-It Ralph 1 as King Candy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's that guy you've kind of heard. He plays a villain in Doom Patrol. Like he's that character actor that's kind of like he pops up in everything, and everything is immediately made way better for the sake of it. So he plays a kind of rather kind of creepy, almost Willy Wonka-esque type mind fucker upper, and he kind of apparently uses kind of happiness to essentially power his ship, or some BS that he actually kind of plugs, but usually the happiness thing he actually uses is more of a torture device, and he actually uses that in, is it the second episode in season 2?
It is, yeah. And again, I must have a thing about twos, because again, that was one of my favourite episodes. Episode 2 in season 1 and episode 2 in season 2.
So in that, we're like taken into Gary's kind of idyllic fantasy happy land, which weirdly enough doesn't involve Quinn, but involves Cookie Waff and Cookie.
Oh, you've gone on mute.
Have I?
Oh, no, you're back.
All right.
Right, so try that again.
Cookie Waff.
No, you're gone off again.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, but as soon as you say Cookie Wives and Cookie Kids.
It mustn't like me saying Cookie Waff and Cookie Kid.
Oh, it said it. I heard that loud and clear. No, I can't. It doesn't like loud noises.
Maybe it's just the equalizer that's kind of is maybe designed to actually kind of stop.
Say it again, but a little bit quieter.
Cookie Waff, Cookie Kids. But yeah, so that's his kind of fantasy, which and then they're kidnapped.
Oh, can't hear you again.
Okay, it's actually starting to be annoying now. I take it it's not been doing that all the way through.
No.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, I'll continue to talk, and then hopefully it kind of pick stuff up.
So let's go back. So we're in the ship of
Hush Fluffles.
Yes. And Gary is essentially hooked up to a machine, a bit like in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And goes into his happy place where we meet
Cookie Wife Quinn. And Cookie Kids.
Yeah. And Gary is like this retired police officer, and the whole world is like super 80s, and he's wearing like the reflective aviator glasses.
Yeah.
And someone comes up to him to say, you need to kill some antagonist. And he's like, but I'm retired. But he goes along to do it anyway by dance fighting, which I loved tremendously.
It was hilarious.
He turns up in like cut off denim shorts and does all of these cool dance moves, and the effect of that kills all the little bears that surround him.
They're like, what, frost bears or something, I think they are. Yeah. And so, So, as I say, weirdly enough, his happy place doesn't involve Quinn. So I don't know if she might need to kind of question their relationship regard to that as well. So that's a kind of fairly standard episode. Gary also meets his mother in season 2 as well. So his mother's voice...
Yeah, but I like the way that he finds out his mother's still alive, because it opens on a scene where it's a bit like in one of the Star Warses, I couldn't tell you exactly which one, where they're in the Arctic planet and they're riding the big things that Luke Skywalker opens up to rescue.
So Empire Strikes Back and Tauntauns, but continue.
Yeah, whatever. And a spaceship comes up, and it is flown by Father De Winter, can't remember what his name was, and the 2 children who go on to say that they've sacrificed everything to hunt him down to avenge Melanie De Winter.
Yeah.
And they get it to the point where Gary is like teetering on the edge of a cliff, and he jumps off, and then
Back to Future 2 style.
Yeah. Very Back to the Future, where he rises up on the roof of one of the ships. But it's very good. I love all the little sort of pop culture references all the way through it.
Yeah, because you can tell like Olan's probably an 80s child, pretty much like the both of us as well. So, so finds out his kind of mum's still alive. She's voiced by Claudia Black, who...
because the family De Winter say that because Gary killed, although he didn't kill Melanie De Winter, that they're going to kill his mother. And he's like, my mother? I don't even know if she's alive. And they're like, we've tracked her down. And that's when he finds out he has a mother. But anyway, I thought I would elbow that in because it's important that little bit where it's a callback to Melanie de Winter and the skin suit.
Yes, absolutely. But yeah, so Claudia Black was in Farscape. I don't know if you ever watched Farscape. So I can't remember what her character name was.
She was also in a video game as well, I believe.
She's also in Pitch Black.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, and she's basically horrible. Is probably the easiest way to kind of describe it. So Gary kind of reconciles, and Gary he finds her in this kind of prison, like all geared up to kind of basically kind of gear a piece of his mind, but she's going to get executed. And they kind of help her, but they really shouldn't help her because she's pretty much just a dick.
The worst.
Yeah.
But when they first rescue her, everybody loves her, and they're hanging off her every word as she talks about all of the adventures she's had.
Yeah.
And even Gary kind of like
he starts to warm, doesn't he?
But Nightfall's having absolutely none of it. She can see right through all of the bullshit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so it's like it's a recurring thing in season 1, season 2 as well, whereby he's constantly disappointed by his mum, to the point whereby it doesn't really kind of faze him when she does something horrible. He's kind of expecting it. Yeah. And it's quite sad because like when you kind of go back and as I say, it's like it's no just a more like fun, like a funny roller coaster. There's an awful emotional beat, and Gary's kind of past very traumatic. His dad effectively sacrifices himself, and
because
mum
there's a lot of
abandons
scenes.
him.
There's a lot of scenes in season 1, quite early on, where it establishes that why Mooncake's called Mooncake, because John Goodspeed is going off to close the breach in final space that we then see later on when Gary goes onto the ship and they beat up the Lord Commander. But before he goes, he hands Gary a jar with a caterpillar in it and a little sticky label on it that says Mooncake. And then he flies off, and then the ship explodes, from what we can tell.
Yeah.
And Gary's only a little boy at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming caterpillars and butterflies don't really live that long. So once that Mooncake's gone, that's why he calls the floating pixel Mooncake.
Mooncake 2, the sequel.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like fairly traumatic childhood, because it turns out as well that like Gary's mom is effectively just kind of with John Goodspeed in order to kind of, she's like a spy. She's always like trying to kind of get information on him and stuff like that.
Not really.
I think at first definitely, and then
she's sent on a mission to get information out of John Goodspeed on the mission. But she ends up falling in love with him and having a child with him. And then someone tries to sort of snap her back to reality on what her mission actually is. And I think she's tormented inside by having a perfect life with John Goodspeed and completing the mission that she's been sent on.
Yeah, but she pretty much almost out of the gate doesn't really kind of rate Gary at all. She's actually quite kind of...
Yeah.
He's just kind of there. And to the point whereby she actually kind of blames Gary when like John kind of walks in on her, catches her on a conversation with like her superiors, and basically tells her to get to it. So she effectively blames that on Gary, which is again pretty harsh. Like he's got a pretty shit life. So I really kind of hope that isn't reflective of stuff that's happened to Olan Rogers, because that would be really kind of horrible if that was the case.
But I mean, there's loads of family drama in it as well, because one of the earlier episodes of season 2 is where Ash goes back to her home planet, because they believe there's a dimensional key on her home planet.
Yep.
And then we go into the backstory of Ash's parents, who had 2 daughters, Hart and Ash. And on their planet, it was important for parents to sacrifice their children to the serpent.
Yeah.
And it's the whole, we see a lot of emotion from Ash. And when they go back to, I can't remember what the planet's called, it's like Sarah something.
Yeah, Serpentis?
Serpentis, yeah. When they go back to Serpentis, they actually enter the serpent, and they see Harp, and oh god, what does she say?
She's pretty.
She's
It's
gone.
almost like kill me kind of thing, isn't it?
She's gone. She's gone.
Yeah.
But
Aye. So there's an
that was
awful lot of kind of
another
like.
emotional beat.
Whew, aye. Not
You don't
happy.
get any of Fox's backstory. I wonder if they'll explore that.
No, yeah, because like there does seem to be a dedication to like Ash's kind of backstory and stuff like that, but Fox is kind of left, isn't he?
Yeah.
But him and Ash are very kind of close to like even though Clarence is their kind of dad, they kind of know what he's all about. Like but they've definitely bonded as brother and sister. You can kind of tell that they're definitely more loyal to each other than they probably would be with Clarence, because they know that Clarence is an arsehole. But yeah, so so season 2, Dimensional Keys. That's the shtick. And again, spoiler alert, but they're successful. And they kind of free Bolo, and effectively at the end of season 2, they end up going into final space whereby we're going to kick off season 3. A couple of wee kind of points though. Avocado is back, kinda.
Yeah.
They bring him back for an episode and then have him possessed by an evil entity, who almost kills Gary, and Little Cattle runs away.
Gary adopts Little Cattle.
Yeah, and then Avocado again kind of comes back at the end episode, but then is freed. We kind of hope by the end of it as well. So again, we hope he's kind of fine. But
I loved the bit where they first get Avocado back and they start beating him with whips to make him remember.
The memory whip thing.
Because Ash was like, on my planet, if you forget something, you get beaten by sticks until you remember it, and you always did. So they get a whole load of whips from Clarence because he's a sexual deviant, and they start whipping him. And Avocado can remember some things, but he can't remember Little Cattle, and Little Cattle like takes
he winds him up. Winds him up the whole episode of it as well.
Yeah. Just as he regains his memory of Little Cattle, he is then possessed by Invictus, who's one of, I think he's like the main Titan.
Yeah,
like
I think they're leading up to for him
boss.
to be the main evil kind of Titan. And because I think if you look at the poster for season 3, they've all got the Invictus eyes, so it seems to imply that at some point or another they're either going to be possessed by it, or maybe like he's maybe already jumped to somebody. Like, I don't really kind of know there. So that's very nutshelly. That's the kind of first 2 seasons.
Yeah.
Season 3 kicked off yesterday in the States on Adult Swim. As I said to you, I'm probably going to kind of wait until it's kind of dropped on Netflix, and I'll watch it then. How do we think that season 3 is going to go? Because like for the trailer, I'm a little bit kind of like worried about it, but there's a bit where Gary and Avocado will kind of get into a fairly heated fight, it looks like, in the kind of trailer. So I'm wondering if something kind of really big happens there. And I really kind of hope that it's not like a major death of a particular character, because I think that would be really kind of crushing.
I don't think they could really kill off Avocado again, because I think Avocado's a really strong character in it. Yeah. And I think people really like Avocado.
Yeah, maybe not Avocado, but I'm a little bit worried that Little Cattle might go.
Maybe he's got other commitments. He's played by Steve Young.
Yes,
who plays Glenn on The Walking Dead.
He's in an Oscar-nominated film this year as well, which I cannot remember what is, but potentially. He's got
a big actor.
Yeah, I like him as well. I like him as Glenn in Walking Dead, and I like him as Little Cattle. So it's one of these, again, same deal. Like,
Can't tell it's him.
Exactly. If you, unless you kind of look him up. So yeah, so like by in season 3, they're in final space. I'm wondering if it'll maybe end on season 3 as well. I wonder if there's maybe only going to be three.
Heaps and heaps of adventures to go.
Yeah, bunches.
And Gary Gary promised his dad that he'd have bunches and bunches of adventures.
Yeah. So, yeah, like, if you haven't watched Final Space, it is fairly kind of underrated. I wasn't overly fussed. The good lady that I'm speaking to at the moment actually kind of sent me a trailer. I watched the trailer at the time. I was like, like I didn't really kind of rate it.
I
And then
believe your exact words was, "That looks pish."
I'll take that. That probably sounds like me. And then it popped onto Netflix, and I was like, what could it hurt? And then I kind of just started watching it, and yeah, I don't know if it was a bad trailer. I don't know if I was maybe, I don't know, focusing on like maybe how annoying Gary was in the trailer.
I
don't
think
know.
it's probably because you don't believe a word I say.
I wholeheartedly disagree with that.
Everything that I have recommended to you thus far, because I don't recommend you shite. I watch a lot of shite. I don't recommend you any shite. I recommend you the cream of the crop.
I feel that this is a personal attack on my character. I listen to you all the time.
And then immediately ignore it.
But yeah, so I didn't rate the trailer, but when I watched it, I did really like it, to the point whereby I rewatched season 1 almost immediately with my other half. So yeah, it's funny, it's emotionally weighty, it's rife with kind of references, both pop culture and continuity wise. It's like it's very kind of well.
It's great.
Yeah, very kind of well rounded. There's lovable characters. There's characters that you might not like. Erin doesn't like Clarence. I don't like Tribor, which, as I say, is a bit weird. But I kind of get why Erin might not like Clarence. He is a bit of a like creep. It's probably the best way I can put it. So yeah, so if you have to kind of watch Final Space, we'd recommend it wholeheartedly. Yep. I think it's actually quite underrated. I don't think it's getting as much attention as I'd like, and that's always very worrying if something is really good and it's no kind of watched by the masses. Like the worry is that it'll get canned before it can obviously kind of come to its logical conclusion. So that's why I'm maybe wondering if season 3 might be the end thing. I'm pretty sure they actually say when they're talking about like in the Final Space 3 trailers, there's a clip after it to show that the first 2 seasons are gone on HBO Max, and I'm pretty sure that they say something like, that show that you've been telling everybody to watch is going to be on HBO Max or something like that. So yeah, so I really kind of hope they get to finish it. It doesn't get kind of canned too early. If they're wrapping it up on season 3, that's fine. I do want a Blu-ray release. Like I think they released it in DVD in the States. But it was like a limited run, and that was it. So like I want it on Blu-ray, so I can keep it forever and ever, and I can watch it whenever I want. Because streaming's nice, but I like to own the physical copy as well. Yeah. So I'm pretty much thinking I'm gonna knock this on the orbit head.
If for no other reason for Mooncake.
Mooncake is adorable. I've got a T-shirt. Erin's got a plush. I actually says Mooncake is one of my last notes on here as well. I don't know if you can say that, Mooncake. But thank you very much for having a wee chat with me today, Erin. Very much appreciated. Okay. Hopefully you guys watch that. I am not going to edit any of that stuff out, so there's going to be several takes of me going, Cookie Waff and Cookie Kids. And maybe you heard that one. I don't know if that one came through.
Yeah, I still can't hear you.
I can't say Cookie Waff and Cookie Kids.
I can't hear you again. The sound's actually cut off. Oh. Stop being so loud and obnoxious.
No.
Do you know, Skype's actually doing me a massive favour, because anytime you are loud and obnoxious, it cuts you off.
It's really kind of hurtful, Skype. But yeah, I mean, it's understandable as well. But yeah, just going to knock the recording on the head, guys. Thank you very much if you are watching this. Episode 4.
Watch it.
Watch Final Space, of course, but also watch this. And hopefully we've not spoiled too much for you. Hopefully there's enough in there to intrigue you enough to get watching.
Although we have given away a huge amount of spoilers, there's still a huge amount of spoilers that we haven't given away. Yeah,
and plus, you might kind of just stop this video, go back and watch Final Space, and then come back to the video to watch the rest. That's up to you. But yeah. Thank you very much. Episode 4, I'll try and do next month. try to kind of do it at least once a month kind of thing. I'm not too sure what I'll do that on, but I will do it on something. But yeah, guys, thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.
Bye.